With AI digital infrastructure investments set to go north of $1 trillion over the coming years, AI represents possibly a larger opportunity than cloud computing did just 10 years ago. One of the players riding that wave is UK-based Kao Data, and I'm today joined by its Chief Commercial Officer, Spencer Lamb. Spencer, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you.
Let's jump right in. How is the convergence of AI and hyperscale workloads driving the change in the wider data center market? What's so different about what's happening and what's coming?
It's creating a situation compounding some historical problems that have been unnecessarily created, unknowingly created. The regions across EMEA, which have been supporting the large cloud hyperscale deployments, have been growing exponentially over the last 5 years, and we've all been talking about it in the market for many months. The deployment of the infrastructure that supports generative AI, i.e. predominantly GPU-based chip cards, so the NVIDIA equipment, that adds a completely, or compounds the challenge even further because of the dense nature of that infrastructure. So these areas such as in Frankfurt, in London, in Slough, where the cloud providers have been deploying huge amounts of cloud infrastructure and now looking to accommodate this next technical infrastructure to support AI. And the issue I think we're going to be seeing, if we're not seeing it already, is how is that going to be achieved in these current markets which are already power constrained. They're not only power constrained, but there's legislation coming in, as we're seeing in Germany, which is questioning and challenging the reasons why these facilities need so much power. But to be able to support the AI growth, we need to find a home to locate that GPU capability. And if we can't do it in the current regions that have been defined by the hyperscalers, we need to seek somewhere else to do it within these countries. And I think that convergence of the two is really starting to come home to roost now. I don't think anyone's got the answer for it. And I think it's something that certainly the co-location providers, like companies like us, are trying to work out what the answer should be. But it challenges where we are as an industry because of the ambitions to be sustainable even further, because this compute is far more power hungry than the standard cloud application or the standard cloud infrastructure that's been deployed to date.
Yeah, because you're talking growing from about 10, 15 kilowatts to 100 kilowatts in some cases.
Absolutely. So whether it gets to that heady heights of 100 kilowatts, but if it gets to 50 kilowatts, that's a massive jump up per rack. And the adoption of the technology is obviously being taken on by the cloud providers, but it's also by enterprises as well. So it's across the board. So every data center operator needs to understand how and where they're going to be accommodating this hardware. And at the moment, I don't think we've got the answer, and how we're going to be accommodating this hardware.
Just a side question, because you touched on the crux of the question, which is the power. And often we just blame the data center operators for not having power, for not doing things, for not being renewable. Do you think the energy guys are getting involved enough with the sector now? Do they understand what the sector needs and what it provides to the world?
I think so if you look at the national grids in European countries, I don't think they see it as their responsibility to understand what a data center is and what it does. As far as they're concerned, they're predominantly they are a utility provider. They come from a government-backed environment, though in this country, in the UK, where they're obviously privatised. But they certainly don't see it. They don't see it as their responsibility to understand what data centres are and what they're all about. It would help if they did. And I think if we could encourage, and you make a very good point, if we could encourage that collaboration, it would be a far better outcome for the users of the data center operators themselves, but also the power companies when they're looking to upgrade their networks. And there could be very easily a collaborative approach where investment is from the data center operators, the user of the data centers, into the power networks to create available power infrastructure in locations that are suitable for all, both within the country itself, rather than it being in urban areas where it's potentially wresting power infrastructure away from housing developments, as we've heard of late, and putting it into locations that are suitable for all interested parties in these endeavours.
Okay, so and then I guess the next natural question is, how is Kao answering to all those new demands of AI? Because I remember you launched in 2014. I remember coming to your place, to your data center in 2017. The cranes were still up, were still being built.
Yeah.
And you were already talking about AI and CPUs, and NVIDIA came in a few years later. But at the time, I guess people were still looking at this as, well, this is for research, this is for very specific applications. But now AI has become mainstream, but it's going to become ever more mainstream with the wider public and the companies and businesses.
Yeah.
So how are you now addressing, let's say, the second coming of AI in the KO space?
Yeah, I mean, for many, they will be. It's the second coming for us. For many, it's the first. It's the first that's arrived.
We're all on the first one. We're already on the second wave.
Yeah, and to some extent, you're right. Our initiative to work with those organisations deploying that hardware was predominantly driven by our Harlow campus and its proximity to Cambridge University and all the research institutions and interesting creative startups that utilise that hardware in that geography. So we've got a lot of experience of dealing with that type of technology, whether it be the AI side using the GPU NVIDIA cards or whether it be the traditional high-performance computing. Ultimately, they both consume a lot more energy and require a lot more cooling. We've got something of a track record. To date, we've seen from our operations beginning in 2018, organisations predominantly asking for, or already really asking for, air-cooled technology. And what we're now seeing, and we're working with some universities who are very helpful organisations to work with because they're quite creative in their thinking, and they're in effect willing to take a few more risks. So we're working through proof of concepts with them on deploying liquid cooling to the chip combined with air cooling where necessary. So typically you've got 75% of the cooling will be required to be direct cooling to the chip, and the remaining 25% will need to be air. Now, collaborating with those organisations is helpful because they're willing to try new things, and therefore we can get a proof of concept up and running where they're running their own research applications on it, which you would struggle to do with an enterprise who's running critical IT applications on it. So that enables us to do proof of concept, understand customer feedback, and get to a point where we can start fine-tuning our combined hybrid cooling solution to the wider market and therefore wrap it up in robust service level agreements and legal obligations within our contracts and our services to our customers. With regard to the challenge of power, it's a challenge. We're seeking to not divide, this is probably the wrong terminology to use, but provide some geographic resilience in the UK. And at the moment, the hyperscales have one region in the UK, and that's west of London. It's in a very defined small geography, very close to one another. If you go to Germany, you've got Frankfurt, you've got Berlin. You go to Paris, France, you've got Paris, you've got Marseille. In the UK, we just have London. Yeah. So through that belief and that analysis, and in parallel with understanding what customers are seeking to achieve, we have acquired a data center development opportunity in Manchester, looking to create the second region in the UK in that facet, in that geography. It is a rich location for businesses. It's a rich location for research. There's some very exciting things that are going on in the northwest, and it seems madness that we've only got this one region to the west of London. And now what is clearly happening is that region is becoming harder to discover power availability, and the timescales for additional power infrastructure in that geography are becoming much greater due to the lack of availability on the power networks in there.
And I guess it's also a safety kind of action for the grid as well, because you want to disperse the power usage to the land a little bit. You don't have everything concentrated, which is something that we saw recently in I can't remember exactly the country they did it, but there was a country they approved, I think it was in Asia. They wanted to spread out, take it away, I don't know if it was Jakarta, Manila or Bangkok, one of those three cities. They approved a few data centers now, a new zone to build data centers just to disperse the power. Yeah, it makes sense. It's not even just so much to distribute the hosting computing power, it's actually just to distribute the power usage from the grid at the facility stake. So that's another point also into Manchester. Yeah, so if you've got a national grid and you've got the productions coming into the national grid and then distributed out through all the local operators, sharing that rather than it all being concentrated on one part of the grid, it doesn't make logical sense. You're building up that infrastructure in a single point of failure, if you like, down in the southeast of the country. Whereas if you halved it and put it elsewhere, then you've got that spread, and the national grid therefore should be able to operate in a more efficient fashion. Okay, and because you've got experience as well with let's call it the known AI data centers, and then of course you've been working with an AI data center for a long time. What are the main, as we re-engineer the data center, what goes inside and how things work and everything, what are the main differences in terms of financial strategies? Like, where is the money put into place the same way? How do you sort of budget?
What, from a
KO industry perspective?
Deploying an AI data center when compared to
so how does the investment work around that compared to a normal colocation facility?
So the actual financial structure doesn't really differ, but obviously the cost per megawatt is slightly structured in a different fashion because of the higher density that you're deploying. Generally what you're getting is you're getting much more plant infrastructure outside the building, and that you don't see in either the UPS rooms or the switch rooms or the cooling infrastructure outside. And if to the layman, if you walk in, you'll just see a number of racks, but in those number of racks, the reality is there's a lot more kilowatts. So you're getting a smaller data hall, if you like, with less racks, but a lot more power capacity, and therefore also a lot more compute. But the financial dynamics don't particularly change. The finance guys that I work with, they don't scratching their heads trying to work this one out. You've just got a smaller footprint for data halls, much larger footprint for the infrastructure supporting the data halls.
Okay, interesting. So let's talk about now the Kao Data portfolio, and I think let's start with Manchester because I think that's what everyone is very excited about as well.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a full build. It's going to be 40 megawatts. It's
Correct.
a 350 million pound investment, which I think works out $440 million or something like that, and nearly 420,000 square feet of data center space. Why Manchester? And I think we kind of touched a little bit on it, but why is Manchester Kao's first place outside of London or outside the greater London area? What does Manchester have to offer?
I think it's the UK's second city. When you go out there, there's a great vibe to Manchester. That's not a good reason for building a data centre there, but
well, there's a good nightclub down the road.
It's great, yeah, you should go. But there is a real buzz of excitement up there. There's a lot of people moving there. Obviously, London's a very expensive place to live, but there's a lot of business that's investing there. So we see it's probably threefold, really. You have a good opportunity as a business to be able to attract co-location enterprise customers in that geography who currently are underserved with options. So if you look at the current data center landscape up there, you've got really only Equinix with a small number of local providers, and the local providers' scale is not what a largish enterprise would be seeking to host their critical IT applications within, and therefore the only option for them is Equinix. And having a commercial optionality is always key for any organisation. So we obviously see there's an opportunity to be successful in that environment. In addition, you have quite a lot of research going on, as we've experienced with our Harlow campus. So you have a group of universities called the N8 universities, which are all the research universities in that part of the UK. Again, they're going through a similar challenge to what universities have been going through in the southeast, i.e. they've got on-prem data centers that are utilizing expensive real estate, and those data centers aren't fit for purpose. They've been around, their legacy, they've probably been in the university campus for the last 15, 20 years. They've been poorly maintained, so they want to adopt the latest either high-performance computing hardware and also the GPU hardware, but they need a suitable home for it. So again, providing them with an option which is on their doorstep is key to them. They don't want to travel all the way down to the southeast to be able to access a decent data center that can provide a home for their hardware. They want something within reasonable geographic distance. And then there's the cloud providers. So we've already had feedback from some, not necessarily the big three, but other cloud providers who are really interested in diversifying their UK deployments away from London because of the fact they've got users who aren't just based in the southeast of the country. They are utilising their cloud systems in the north or other parts of the UK. So therefore, they see it as a good opportunity to create another, whether you call it an availability zone in that location. So it's a really kind of a three-pronged attack and a three-pronged opportunity that we see by going there.
It makes a lot of sense because we often think of London as being the UK.
Yeah, we do.
There's about 30 million people down here, whilst up there, when you put all the cities together, You've probably got another 30 million.
Oh yeah, yeah.
In the area, so it's not just serving.
The heat map, like kind of the business heat map in the northwest, is significant. You know, it's not to be ignored, and sometimes it is. So it's unfortunate. Plus, obviously Dublin's a huge data centre location. A great deal of the cables that come into the UK come through Manchester, and they come into Manchester and they come down to London. Or they avoid London and they go across the North Sea to Europe. So it's a strategic network point as well.
I would like to make almost a point that if you want to find out where the next big hotspot is going to be in terms of research, universities, business, just have a look at the cranes across the city. And if they're building skyscrapers,
yeah, you go there.
That's the next big hub, and that's what's happening in Manchester.
Absolutely,
there's a lot of towers coming up.
Yeah. And you walk through the city. There's been a huge amount of investment over the last 5-10 years. The buildings are incredible. You know, the care and the attention and how clean and precise the city is. It's impressive.
Okay, so can you just give us a quick snapshot of where you are with the project? I don't remember actually if you've broken ground or not. So
no. So
when's the breaking ground? When's the first phase coming online?
So we acquired the site in April of this year. We're going through a planning process and in parallel a design process. So we've instructed, I think, all of the consultancy teams now, and we're due to be submitting the planning application in November of this year. And we're working with the local authority, which has been very positive in their feedback. They're delighted and keen this investment comes into their area. So we should be getting planning approval in the early part of 2024, and then looking at a live and operational data center in early 2026.
Okay, interesting.
So this is we own the freehold. We're demolishing the building. We're building the shell. So it's a full-on data center development rather than, say, working with a property partner such as Segro in Slough, where you would lease a data center operator would lease a powered shell from them. So
we are 9 to 11 quarters away from the first phase coming online.
Yeah.
Which, putting it that way, sounds like it's tomorrow.
my engineering and design colleagues won't agree with that.
And then, of course, if we travel now to the south, of course, London has been your hub. So Harlow has been the first major hub. Last year, you bought 2 facilities, one in Slough and another one in northwest London.
Correct.
So just walk us quickly through where the platform is.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, go back. So it was a year and a half ago that we acquired the Slough and the Northwest assets. So we were a single site data center operator, which limits you somewhat when you're trying to appeal to customers and be taken seriously and provide a credible capability to the market. So having acquired those assets and being able to offer data center services east and west of London was a big turning point, an inflection point in Kao Data's evolution as a business. And also being able to provide services from Slough, which is, I think outside of Ashburn is the densest, most megawatts deployed data center location globally, was really important for us. So we were able to then be relevant to organizations that wanted to be in that geography and then engage with them and create relationships with them, which we duly have. And then the capacity we had in Slough got sold very quickly, which is obviously good news, but it just shows you the power of those regions and availability zones and the flat D markets, if you like, and having data centers in the right location. So that was an important inflection point in our evolution as a business. And obviously now with Manchester, we are in effect a 4-site data center operator, and we have ambitions beyond the UK to move towards Europe, which I'm guessing is your next question.
I know it's not written down, but that was going to come up. But just on Harlow as well, so before we jump into Europe, to mainland Europe, let's not go to Brexit.
Don't do that.
But so Harlow, because you're finishing up another building now.
Yes.
There's space for at least another one.
Yeah.
Where are we with Harlow?
Okay, so Harlow, if you recall from your visit back in 2017, when with the hard hat, we're watching the first building go up. So the Harlow campus will provide 4 data centers on the campus when it's complete. We're in the final throes of completing the second of those 4 data centers, and that will go operationally live next month. And in doing so, we are going live with a customer. So we've sold the first tranche of capacity that we're going live with. So we're going to have to start the construction of the next phase of within the second data hall within that space. The third building is in the development stage at the moment, and that will be hotly pursued by the fourth building as the fill rate of the data center campus snowballs. As these things accelerate, the more customers you get, the more traction you achieve.
Okay, and then let's talk about what you just said as well, because it's no secret that you have wider ambitions than just the UK or in Europe. How much can you tell us?
Today we announced David Bloom joining us as our chairman, which is fantastic news. And David is in fact the founder of Kao Data, and I've had the pleasure of working with him over the last 3 years, as he's a member, one of the members of the board, being the shareholder from Goldacre. But he's now taking a far more active day-to-day interest in the business, and that's been driven by our appetite to accelerate the growth of the Kao Data platform across to Europe, rather than just being a single country provider. In the same vein that we have addressed Manchester, we are seeking to deploy the Kao Data platform in Tier 2 markets, rather than looking to challenge the challenges of the Tier 1 markets. So we are at the moment finalising which of those Tier 2 markets in Europe that we're going to be seeking, but there probably won't be any surprise of where they will be. We're looking at maybe 3 or 4 locations that will be seeking properties within to then develop.
If I start throwing up names, will you say yes or no?
Well, I mean, Berlin, for example, Milan, Madrid, locations of that nature, and then maybe somewhere a bit more left field perhaps, but we're considering all options at the moment, but we have the shareholder group behind us that are fully supportive of that strategy and that ambition, and creating a genuine European platform. I think it will certainly provide our existing customers the opportunity to take them to Europe, which and with our AI-driven, HPC-driven data center blueprint will be really helpful with this obvious wave of generative AI that's coming through the market at the moment.
I was going to say, because that doesn't really exist in Europe. It's still very much normal hosting colocation services. Yeah. So it's a new product.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we think we see these inflection points in the data center market happen, and we believe we're very well placed to take that opportunity of generative AI moving forward.
And then, I'm very sorry to do this to you, but we're coming up to the time of the Q4 predictions. Mm-hmm. So what are your predictions for 2024 when it comes to data centers in Europe, to AI in Europe, and to everything that we just discussed, and then how is Kao going to move around all that?
Yeah, I mean, it really is what we've been talking about, which is co-location companies accepting the fact that cooling technology needs to change, coming up with a solution. And the thing I'm quite passionate about, and I think the market is always a bit resistant to, is change, because it means you have to design and build things differently and operate them slightly differently, which no one really wants to do because it costs more money. So I think that we will see a meaningful deployments of direct cooling to the chip, or potentially immersive cooling, and I'm agnostic, but I believe that the vendors and people who operate data centers probably will prefer direct cooling to the chip. And I think that's what we're going to see. And I also think that we will see the hyperscalers breaking out of their rigid current regions with their 3 availability zones, because I don't think those three availability zones can support the AI demand.
Okay. Well, Spencer Lamb, Chief Commercial Officer, Kao Data. It's so nice to see you again, and thank you for talking to me. As for your home, thank you for watching. Do give us a follow on social media. Check the website for more digital infrastructure news from across the globe. Until next time, see you then.